everybody, my name is Mike Montgomery, and today we're going to be building this DIY mid-century modern floating bathroom vanity with some really cool storage for accessories. So let's get started on modern builds.
I've been accumulating a decent amount of 3/4 inch red oak plywood, and that's what I'm going to be using to build this floating vanity. To start, I'm breaking down this piece into my two side pieces. These are both 18 inches tall and 12 inches wide. I'm using a straight edge with my circular saw to make sure that I'm getting clean results. And now it's time to cut the bottom piece, and this will come out to a final length of 29 5/8 inch, and it'll be 12 inches wide to match the sides. The top of this cabinet is actually going to be two pieces so that there's an opening for the plumbing to go through. You'll see it all come together in just a minute. To connect these pieces together, I'll be using my Kreg 720 Pro pocket hole jig. To start, I want to give a big thanks to Kreg for sponsoring today's video, but this is the perfect way of assembling our case. Pocket hole joinery is going to allow us to keep our tool palette simple, but still get a really high-end result. I'll leave links to all the Kreg tools in the description, along with the other materials and supplies I'm using. Before I put this cabinet together, I'm going to be edge banding all of the visible plywood layers that'll be showing once it's all assembled. This stuff goes on really easy. It's got a heat activated glue on the back that you use an iron to activate. And this little trimming tool is really handy to make sure that it's all flush before you sand it smooth. Now it's time to put this box together, and you're kind of looking at it upside down. The bottom is towards me. I'm using 1¼ inch long coarse thread pocket hole screws, which are made for softwoods or plywood. I just chose to use screws instead of wood glue and screws during this assembly in case I needed to make any adjustments while I went. All of this is going to need to fit perfect underneath that countertop that I showed at the beginning of the video, so I still want the ability to take anything apart and adjust it if I need to. I also needed a pretty big negative space on the back of this cabinet for the plumbing that's going to be routing through the wall. This bottom piece is pretty skinny because of where the drain is on my wall, but this top piece that we're screwing into the 2x4 studs behind the drywall is pretty beefy, and it's getting attached on all three sides. It's a lot of pocket screws, but they'll all be hidden.
Nice, that's case complete. Let's shift to making our doors.
The game plan is to cut a door blank the same width as our cabinet box. On top of this, we're going to be attaching 3/4 inch plywood strips in this alternating pattern to create a really cool slatted look. And we'll be capping the top and the bottom with an 1.5 inch wide strip.
This right here is the piece that I'm going to use to cut all of my slats out of. I'll start by cutting a blank to the same width as my door.
Going into this, I knew I wasn't going to get as good of results as I would from a table saw. I just made sure I always measured the same distance from the edge that I had cut last. That way I got super consistent results. And if you want to make a circular saw task like this way easier, the Kreg Rip Cut, which I should pick up, is pretty much perfect for repeated cuts like this. In total, I need 11 3/4 inch slats, but I cut a few extra in case any were wonky, which ended up being a good idea. And these 2.5 inch wide pieces are going to be the top and the bottom of the door. In this shot, you can hopefully see how it's all going to come together. This will be a quick preview so that you know what to expect.
And to attach these slats, you can use 1¼ inch or 1 inch nails, and that should work great.
The reason that we're making our door this way is because I want solid veneer facing up, so I'm using the face of the plywood. And this time I'm using wood glue along with the pocket screws, and that's because I don't want these boards going anywhere. I used one of my 3/4 inch slats as a spacer, that way I knew I was making this as uniform as possible. I had the pressure pretty high on my nail gun, that way all of these nail heads set below the surface of the wood, which is going to make the next step way quicker. I should say, even though I used wood glue, it was very light because I didn't want any squeeze out, and any that I did make, I cleaned up with a chisel right away. The last couple of slats are spaced about 7/16 inch apart, just to make up for a little bit of play I had, but I really don't think that it's very noticeable. In hindsight, maybe I should have attached the bottom last.
Awesome, look at that. So cool.
To keep my workspace a little bit cleaner, I pre-cut all of my edge banding so it could be sitting on the side. And during installation, I made sure that my iron was always hovering over wood that I hadn't installed my edge banding on yet. I didn't want to reactivate any glue on the strips that I had already applied the edge banding to. You don't need to sit anywhere very long with an iron if it's set on the high position, but you do want to follow up with a wood block or something you could add a little bit of pressure to make sure that it's really grabbing and that glue adheres well. Edge banding the top of these slats only took about a half hour, and now I'm going to trim the ends flush. The part that did take a long time is edge banding the ends of this door. It's just a ton of tiny little pieces, and it took a little bit longer than an hour to do both sides. Just be patient and make sure you've got a sharp utility knife to trim these pieces to width when you need to. Making such a short slab but spending a ton of time on the ends of this really makes me think the cost-benefit analysis might swing towards making this project out of solid wood for the doors. Trimming all of this edge banding flush with the utility knife is just meticulous, and it takes a while, and you still have to sand it afterwards. That's totally fine if you're making a really long panel like I did on the headboard, because that would be a ton of money to build out of solid wood. But as long as you didn't have a bunch of glue squeeze out to deal with, the solid wood door might be a smarter move. This cheap little edge banding tool is the bomb. It's really handy if you've got a lot to do in a day. But don't worry, don't think it's necessary. A razor blade works great also. To round over all these corners, I'm using 180 grit sandpaper that seemed to work great without being too aggressive.
Now we need to cut our door blank into 2 pieces, but I'm not gonna be slicing it down the center. Instead, I'm gonna be measuring 12.5 inches off of the left edge, and this is where I'm gonna cut the slab in 2 pieces. It's gonna be directly in line with our sink drain. I'm thinking this is gonna look really cool, but I've got my fingers crossed.
And notice the blue painter's tape because I've got my show face facing up while I'm cutting.
Hang on, I have to double check my board to make sure it is 12.5 off the left edge. Whoa! It's 12.25. I just saved a nightmare from happening. This is why you make notes.
That was a huge disaster averted. I'm already not cutting this directly down the center of the door, so I want to make sure that this is right in the middle of where the sink drain is.
And that is a clean cut. 12.25. The plan now is to attach our hinges onto the back of these doors. And to do that, I'm gonna be using the Craig Concealed Hinge Installation Jig. This is gonna help line everything up and give me basically drill press level accuracy out of a cordless drill.
All I needed to do was mark the center line of where my hinges were gonna go and then clamp the hinge jig in place. Pretty much all of these European style hinges need a 35mm recess drilled for the mechanism to go into. And with this jig, you can adjust the distance from the edge that you're drilling that recess. This just really upgrades the quality of what you're gonna get without using something like a drill press. Connecting the hinges to the door is simple though. Just make sure that they're in there square and you drill a pilot hole so that the screw goes in easily. And connecting the other piece of the hinge to the cabinet is really simple too. Just make sure that the center line is lined up in the corresponding location.
Let's test the fit. So far so good. See if we can click them in place. 1, 2. And it's just gonna need to adjust a little bit.
What's great about these hinges is they've got a ton of adjustability so that you can get a really nice reveal however you need to.
Nailed it.
I installed the second set of hinges the same way as I did the first, and check out how clean of a reveal I was able to get between these 2 doors. Pretty much an exact blade width.
Nice! So far, this project is looking 1-800 Super Pro. And I've just got a couple of more steps before it's time to add finish.
This internal divider is going to serve a couple of different purposes. One, it helps keep everything square and supported in the middle. But on the right, in this small compartment, is where I'm going to put a drawer where people can put things like a hair dryer or a straightening iron. So make sure and stay tuned for that. And in the big compartment, I'll be using my Craig shelf pin jig from today's sponsor, Craig. I'm using this jig to drill a bunch of evenly spaced holes that I can insert shelf pins anywhere I want to put a shelf. This is my first time using this jig, and I can see how it's really a game changer, especially if you were doing something like a really large bookshelf. And because you can just keep going and going by inserting a pin into a previous hole, there's no limit to how big of a project you could use this for.
I want a Windex or cleaner bottle to be able to fit underneath this shelf. And that's perfect.
Now it's time to sand this whole project with 220 grit sandpaper in preparation for finish. I'm applying a couple coats of Maker brand Simple Finish to really bring out the wood grain in this red oak. I use the rag to wipe a heavy coat of the oil on, and then I let it set for about 10 or 15 minutes before wiping off any excess, not allowing it to pool up and dry anywhere. Right now, Simple Finish is out of inventory, but we will be back in stock very soon, so stay tuned.
And installing this box should be pretty straightforward. Back when I originally installed this floating countertop, I added a lot of blocking behind it, so it's already in there secure. The 2 lag bolts holding this on the wall are secured into the 2x4 stud behind the drywall. And now I'm gonna use the Kreg magnetic stud finder to find the rest of the stud locations. That way I can mark them and drill pilot hole locations for when we screw this into the wall.
You can see the little hole that I drilled in the top of the cabinet. That way the faucet supply lines could feed through easily, and I'm using 3-inch long screws.
Oh wow, awesome! I feel like I could sit on this. I probably shouldn't though. And I'm sure these doors are gonna need a little bit of adjustment now that everything's in, but I am excited to see this reveal.
I just needed to lower each door down about 1/16 of an inch, and then I could insert my shelf pins in that middle shelf that I made a couple of cutouts in, that way the plumbing could feed through. I might end up grabbing a black extension tube to replace that white one so that all the plumbing underneath matches, but I could test it out to see how it works and to make sure that there isn't any leaks.
And down here, we've got no leaks. That is awesome. My plumbing skills have definitely improved.
Finally, I'm attaching some drawer slides for what ended up being a last-minute addition to this project. Instead of plain old storage here, I decided to add a drawer. That way people with a hairdryer, a curling iron, or straightening iron has a custom drawer to store all of those things neatly. This drawer box is 7.5 inches wide, 9 inches tall, and it nests nicely into that opening on the right side. And this insert plate allows you to store all of those bathroom accessories that I mentioned earlier. I'll get more than just a hairdryer for the beauty shots.
And we are officially done.
Just if you're curious, this is what this vanity wall looked like when I bought this income property. But now, let's check it out. I am absolutely digging this slatted mid-century modern look, and it pairs with this floating vanity top really nicely. It looks like a combination you would have bought together. The storage is totally maximized. In the bottom part of the big compartment is space for Windex, Ajax, and Comet cleaners like that, and on the top, it's the perfect height for toilet paper rolls. This is a relatively small bathroom, but I want to make it really convenient for anybody in here getting ready, so this storage is key. I was a little nervous doing the offset cut on the doors, but lining it up with the drain ended up being the move. It looks great.
And now with this wood tone, this side of the bathroom totally matches the opposite side where I put in the custom shower with these wood slat looking tiles. Not too bad. So that's it, and I really hope y'all enjoyed this video. Make sure and like, comment, and subscribe down below. And big thanks to Kreg for making this project possible. I'll leave links to the pocket hole jig as well as all the other cool Kreg tools that I use. And we'll see you next time on Modern Builds / Mike's First Flip. Bye everybody.